think other teachers or other people, professionals, aren't in the same mindset that you have?
Because, man, that's the social rhetoric. Like, that's what's normal.
Mm-hmm.
What's normal is to say, you know, only 1% make it. What's normal is to say, well, you better have a backup plan. But people know, like, athletes know that.
Yeah.
And I think people are so used to saying it, they've never thought of anything else to say.
Mm.
And remember, man, people believe everything they hear. And it's not that it's wrong that only 1% make it. That's in a lot of stuff. At Dean College, let's talk Dean. We have a school of dance at Dean College. Most dancers want to dance professional. Okay, but not all of them make it. But they come into college wanting to do the same thing, dancing professional. But people don't treat them the same way as they treat the athletes. So that wasn't odd to me that people had a desire. But what the reason why people say the 1% part of they don't look at having that connection and conversation, it's really because that's what they're used to hearing. And at the end of the day, man, it's still an institution of education. So, you got a lot of people that's working, but when they was in college, they might not have been athletes. They might not even know an athlete. So they didn't have that experience and understanding of like athletics actually is a great retention tool at a college. Most athletes are trying to stay eligible. Like, they going to study. I never had an issue. If you think about it, you was one of my students. I never had an issue telling you like, hey man, you go to the computer lab and check out this computer. Okay, you go do it because you knew you had to stay eligible. At least you got to at least have a 2.5 to play. So athletes have a hunger and desire to finish school. If you at JUCO, most guys are trying to finish up in a year or 2 years and leave. So if I got a athlete at a junior college, especially, that's trying to leave in a year and a half, that's basically an honor student trying to get out of there. So I'm going to help that student get there, but everybody else don't see on the inside of athletes. They just see, the athleticism, but they don't get, athletes wake up 5, 6 in the morning, training, lifting, all that. Ain't that the same thing businessmen do? Entrepreneurs do? I mean, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Different games, same attitude, right? So they in the gym when nobody else is in the gym. So I've always known what's come from out, and then being an athlete myself. So I knew what I had. Even though I was good on the field, I was still good in the classroom too. So I knew I had the duality. You know what I mean? So other people don't have that.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast, your source for living a healthier lifestyle and developing a better mind, body, and soul. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful fitness gurus, athletes, and individuals who are passionate about enhancing all aspects of life, we provide you with the tools to help you take your lifestyle to another level. And now your host, Quinn Mitchell.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. This is your host, Quinn Mitchell. Today I have a very special guest, Dariel DT Henry. He is an author, educator. He's also the host of his own podcast show, Swag Bender. How you doing today?
I'm great, man. How you doing, Quinn?
I'm doing good. So for people not familiar with you, would you mind giving a brief introduction about yourself?
Yes. So I am known to most people in my working circle as Dr. Dariel DT Henry. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts right now. Well, I'm in Massachusetts, not necessarily in Boston, but I'm in Massachusetts right now. I work in higher ed at 2 colleges. And though I work at Bristol Community College as the director of TRIO. We have 3 TRIO three TRIO programs at that college, SSS, Upward Bound, and Talent Search. And then I work at Regis College as a education consultant and recruiter in admissions. So I recruit 5 students each year into the education major who want to work with underrepresented populations or diversity or increase diversity within the education system. And so every year I have 5 full tuition scholarships that I recruit high school students to major in education with. Oh, wow. So that is something else that I do. And then on top of that, excuse me, like you said, I run the podcast, mentoring coaching, academic coaching, a little bit of life coaching, but really just running the podcast, presenting, sharing my knowledge with people, sharing knowledge about race and diversity, and just making change through the transfer of knowledge to different groups of people that may not always be in the same room. Let's say that.
Yes, definitely. So for people not familiar with you, like you said, you've always been a mentor for me. Even when we met at Dean, you was always
Right.
looking out. You was always passionate about helping others. So what really made you get passionate about being in the position you're in and helping others in general?
Okay, so here's the thing, man. I education saved my life. Like it's not something that I just went to college and it was good for me. Nah, like if I didn't go to college, I probably would have ended up in some bad places. And it's not just like, oh, the simple story of, oh, I grew up in a bad neighborhood or this and that. I think a lot of people don't realize the politics behind the politics that each generation deals with. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. And I'll get into what got me to here. But think about in the 90s, if you go back and study criminal justice, you'll read about the Fair Sentencing Act that Bill Clinton signed in the 90s, 94 or something like that. And that Fair Sentencing Act included things like 1020 life, where in Florida, if you got caught with a gun that wasn't registered to you, was automatic 10 years. Use it in a robbery, automatic 20 years. Things like 3 strikes law, 85% in truth sentencing, mandatory minimums. And all of those sentencing laws were put into place. And if I had not gone to college, I think I could have gotten some trouble that could have gotten me easily a 5-year mandatory sentence or 10-year mandatory sentence, just because of the ways the laws were set up. Like, just as well as I know, and the listeners may know that, on one half of the country, marijuana is legalized and recreational. But in another parts of the country, you can go to jail for up to 5-10 years just for having a joint in the car. So when I say, college saved my life, I mean, if I didn't leave Miami and come to Massachusetts as a college student first, like I said, I probably would have been in some bad situations. But in the process of going to college and completing all of the degrees that I have, and I'm not saying those to brag, I'm saying those to inspire, I've learned that I love to help students navigate the college environment. A lot of students have the desire to finish college. A lot of students, have that grit, that grind, that hustle, that discipline, but they don't always have the resources or just the social capital to go through college, right? So you don't always know when you show up in college, you may not know what the bursary is or what the CSA stands for, or what a CA is, or what all these things are. And I understand that. So I try to help students understand those and navigate the college environment, because I understand having a desire to do something, but not having the resources to do it with. And so that's what keeps me in this position, because I have resources for students. Like I mentioned, I have 5 scholarships for students. That's a resource for a lot of students, so as long as I'm in an industry where I can constantly provide resources for students to get through, I'm gonna stay in it, man.
No, definitely. It's something I want to definitely talk to you about, is because like just thinking about my whole basketball career, when I was at Dean, you were just somebody that, if people that's listening, if you're familiar with Franklin, Massachusetts, not a lot of Black people there, besides the people on the sports team. So you were one of the people that people could go to, and we could just chop it up with, and you were just a listening ear. You give great advice. So
Right.
what were some of the challenges that you've seen that just being in the whole college atmosphere that student athletes particularly go through, like some of the challenges that they went through?
All right. So, yeah, man. And thank you, man, for, giving me a shout out for just being there with y'all. That's just, what I like to do. I would say, if I had, let me give a couple of them. So one, a lot of athletes struggle with, and it's not the athletes, it doesn't start necessarily with the athletes. It can start with the adults and staff members too. So a lot of athletes get to college, man, and there's this friction that's instant. And people probably don't realize where it comes from. When a college athlete gets to school, most of the time people ask them, what do you want to be, when you grow up? Or what do you want to do? And they mostly say they want to go pro. And most people, most staff members will say, well, you know, only 1% make it, right? And I think that's the first struggle is as an athlete, you're not stupid. You know that. You've been told that all your life. But you're not really trying to have conversations with people that's just doubting your dreams the first day you get on campus, the first week you get on campus. And it's hard sometimes as an athlete just to deal with that type of rhetoric because yeah, you know that, but you got to give it all you got right now so that you might be in that 1%. And even if you don't get in that 1%, you still want to give it all you got. So I think one of the things athletes got to realize is that everybody ain't down for your dream. And don't expect them to be. So don't go to college expecting everybody to believe in your first dream. Because, you know, you have two careers. There's your athletic career, and then there's your second career after your athletic career, whether that's college, semi-pro, pro, wherever, how far you go. But everybody's not going to believe in that. And you have to be okay with that as an athlete. So that's the first thing that I see people struggle with is they want everybody to believe in them. You don't need that. Sometimes you're just there. I'm here to get what I need to get. If you're a JUCO, whatever, you get what you get and you get out of there. Sometimes you plan on a team where you know you're going to play basketball overseas after this, and you just on the team ready to keep your skills up, you know, so you got to, you know, recognize what you're there for. That's the first thing I would say. The other thing is deep exploration. A lot of times athletes will go to a school just for the athletics, get there, don't find out they don't have their major. The major doesn't go with your class schedule and your practice schedule. It's not always visiting schools and looking at where they are, you know, so you just end up not in a bad place, but just in a place you didn't expect it to be. And sometimes that can work out good for you. Sometimes it can work out bad. So, you know, when you're looking at colleges, you want to look at whether they're in rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas, because you might end up somewhere at a great college, but that's in a rural area where the closest grocery store is 40 minutes away or something like that. So just know where you want to go. And then the other thing I would say is many athletes don't, they fail to recognize that you have an opportunity to build both careers. You don't have to, it's not a matter of either or, it can be a matter of both and. You can be an athlete and a student. You can be an athlete and a future business person, an athlete and a CEO. If you're an athlete, and most athletes will say this, right? You're doing it now. Most athletes will take their name, their fame, and whatever they have, and afterwards they're going to build a company. They're going to be philanthropists. They're going to do something and give back. You can learn how to do that while you're in college. So you don't have to say, well, I'll just do that when I'm done. No, take college as a place to say, hey, well, I'm going to build my athletic career, and I'm going to build my entrepreneurial career, and I'm going to build my CEO career, and I'm going to learn all these skills while I'm in school, because I'm not just going to be an athlete. I'm going to be an athlete with a company. I'm going to be an athlete with an organization. And so athletes will get to college and think, well, I ain't going to do school. And it's like, no, take advantage of that. Take advantage of that opportunity. Take advantage of all of those tutors, all of those writing editors. Take advantage of all that stuff. You know, all that stuff costs money. And you're not getting it for free. You're actually paying for it through your play. So you wouldn't be an athlete and not go get your ankles taped. You wouldn't be an athlete and not go, you know, not go to the dining hall, because you realize all of those things are a part of the package as an athlete. But so is the academic pieces and the extracurricular pieces on a campus. So if you're a basketball player and you think you might play overseas, if you get a semester where you can study abroad, go for it. Because you could get an idea of what it's like overseas as an athlete. So, you know, take advantage of all of those opportunities in college. So I think that's some of the mistakes. Athletes don't always see the whole picture of what they can take advantage of. And
I don't mean to backtrack, but speaking on that friction that you're talking about, it's crazy because when you brought it up, it just reminded me of like the first week of school, like you're in the classes and the teachers all go on the icebreakers, like what are your future goals and everything. And me being who I am, I've always dreamed to play overseas, play in the league. So it was like, okay, I would say go play pro. And then you get all these funny looks around the classroom, like, are you sure that's what you want to do? So just speaking on that, it's just crazy that you brought that up, because that friction is really there.
Yeah, because you instantly turn, you like, oh, I'm not dealing with that anymore. So one of the things you might have not noticed it instantly because I just was doing it so much when I was at Dean. Is I help people change that conversation. So what I would do is I would say, what do you want to do? I want to go pro. I want to play pro ball. I'd be like, all right, well, what's your second career gonna be? Because I figure, you're going to get the first career. Okay, cool. All right, you better give it all you got right now. Because, when you're 19, you'll run into a wall if a coach told you to. So I'm like, give it all you got right now. You're young, you got the energy, give it everything you got. But I don't care if you play 20 years in the league, you're going to need a second career. So what I do is I just immediately accept your first career. Let's give that a try. Because I don't know, you could grow 4 inches in a year. So you know how it go, man. We don't know these things. You never know who's going to be who, right? So I just try to focus on the second career and say, well, let's focus on that because I know you're going to work out, train, and all of that stuff. And that's why I never coached, bro. That's why I always did the academic piece because I wanted to be in the background saying, all right, you go play ball. Let me show you Tom Brady, Charles Woodson Wiring Company. Let me show you the Patriots player that owns 17 Dunkin' Donuts and Taco Bells. Let me show you what you could do once you get all that money from your first career. And that's what helped build the relationship because the athletes would then say, okay, he believe in me and he want to help me out with something else. But when you get those people that immediately say, well, only 1% make it, or it's an instant friction.
Now, why do you think a lot of teachers are like that, though? Why do you think a lot of people in those positions are like that? Because like I said, you don't want to do is like I said, I can see you anywhere. I can see we could chop it up like that because we always had that connection. Like when the first day I seen you talked to my parents, it was like, okay, what you doing, bro? You playing basketball? Okay, nice to meet you. But like it was always that connection. But in these other teachers, I'd be like, I'm not even going to stop and bother. I mean, I'm not going to waste my time. So why do you think other teachers or other people, professionals, aren't in the same mindset that you have?
Because, man, that's the social rhetoric. Like that's what's normal. What's normal is to say, only 1% make it. What's normal is to say, well, you better have a backup plan. But people know, like athletes know that. And I think people are so used to saying it, they've never thought of anything else to say. And remember, man, people believe everything they hear, and it's not that it's wrong that only 1% make it. That's in a lot of stuff. At Dean College, let's talk Dean. We have a school of dance at Dean College. Most dancers want to dance professional, okay? But not all of them make it. But they come into college wanting to do the same thing, dancing professional. But people don't treat them the same way as they treat the athletes. So that wasn't odd to me that people had a desire. But what the reason why people say the 1% part of they don't look at having that connection, the conversation, it's really because that's what they're used to hearing. And at the end of the day, man, it's still an institution of education. So you got a lot of people that's working, but when they was in college, they might not have been athletes. They might not even know an athlete. So they didn't have that experience and understanding of like athletics actually is a great retention tool at a college. Most athletes are trying to stay eligible. Like, they going to study. I never had an issue. If you think about it, you was one of my students. I never had an issue telling you like, hey man, you go to the computer lab and check out this computer. Okay, you go do it because you knew you had to stay eligible. At least you got to at least have a 2.5 to play. So athletes have a hunger and desire to finish school. If you at JUCO, most guys are trying to finish up in a year or 2 years and leave. So if I got a athlete at a junior college, especially, that's trying to leave in a year and a half, that's basically an honor student trying to get out of there. So I'm going to help that student get there, but everybody else don't see on the inside of athletes. They just see, the athleticism, but they don't get, athletes wake up 5, 6 in the morning, training, lifting, all that. Ain't that the same thing businessmen do? Entrepreneurs do? I mean, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Different games, same attitude, right? So they in the gym when nobody else is in the gym. So I've always known what's come from out, and then being an athlete myself. So I knew what I had. Even though I was good on the field, I was still good in the classroom too. So I knew I had the duality. You know what I mean? So other people don't have that.
So another thing I want to touch upon too, because I know this is your specialty, is in when students are transferring. So somebody like me, I transferred like I want to say four different schools. I like each year I transferred just for it wasn't for education, just for basketball reasons, just the right fit for me. And luckily, like I've always had my parents, they always kept me level-headed, so make sure I got good grades and whatnot. But just during the transfer process, it's like there's a lot of things that a lot of kids don't realize that they need, and
Mm-hmm.
you get blindsided by it if you're not aware of the process. Like luckily for me, I had somebody like you when I transferred out of there, and you was telling me where, so I got to do this, that, and the third, just to go to my other JUCO. But what is some things that kids are not aware of during the transfer process?
Man, there's so much. And you know, at some point we can talk about. I got a book coming out that's helping out a lot of football players, and you know, for all athletes that's trying to go to school on a scholarship. I got a little book that's coming out shortly that's gonna break some of it down. But I would say, man, a lot of times they don't do the academic research, right? You talk to the coach. Yeah, you could come over here. You could transfer over. You could play on my team. I got a spot for you. Okay, great. That's good. But then, you know, even though you get recruited for the sport, you still have to get academically admitted into the school. And then there's an academic part. So a lot of athletes forget that. So what happens is you might be a sophomore or entering your sophomore year at one school, and then you transfer to another school and all your credits don't transfer over. And now you're first semester sophomore in the fall, or let's say you're a second semester freshman in the fall when you should be a first semester sophomore, something like that. They don't recognize that, and a lot of transfer credits. That's a big situation because a lot of students should look at maybe 2 or 3 schools and see which school takes the most of the credits. But when you don't, they end up walking into the situation and realizing, oh, I lost 15 credits all of a sudden, and that has to do with eligibility and things like that. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that people athletes miss. The other thing I would say is looking at the additional costs that go into it. So always think of travel to the school, breaks, summer breaks, November, Thanksgiving breaks, times that you got to travel home and come back. And then just, those expenses that the school aren't paying for. So that's something that, I would say students need to really pay attention to. But as far as the athletic part, most students like to talk to the coaches and they know what they're doing on that end, but it's really the other parts that they miss. Oh, and I would say this, whenever you got to transfer, make sure you get a copy of your transcripts, an official copy. And if you can, get like 5 of them and just don't open them up. Even at right now, if y'all in high school, any college or whatever, if you're going to transfer, if you even thinking about transferring, just go order a couple copies of your transcript. Don't open it. It's official when it's sealed. If you want an unofficial copy, just print it off the computer. But I would keep a couple copies of my transcript. Even high schools, remember, every college you go to, you're going to want that transcript. Right, Quinn? I see you shaking your head. They don't know that. Every time you leave a college, make sure you get your transcript and make sure your bill is paid before you leave so your transcript can get released. But make sure you have all those. But I would keep, copies of my transcript sealed in an envelope if you're in any kind of transfer thought.
I'm not gonna lie, because that was probably one of the hardest things. Just getting the transcript sometimes can be a pain. It's like, especially when the guidance counselor doesn't get back to you, it's always something, man.
Your student ID don't work no more. They closed off your account, man. It's so much.
It's always a nightmare. But jumping on to another topic, because I know we discussed this before when I had called you. I know it could be a little sensitive to some people just because a lot of people don't like to talk about it. But it's just everything that's going on in the world right now, and I know you're an educator and you're very familiar with the topic. So I just want to ask you this simple question, right? So with everything that's going on in the world, what is it that people that are like non-Black that they don't understand what the message you're trying to get across to them, if you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. What is the? Repeat it again. I just want to make sure I said it.
So what is the message that non-Black people are? So basically, what I'm trying to say is, we're and with everything that's going on in the world right now, people having doubt, non-black, have a hard time understanding why we're acting the way we're acting and why we're doing the things we're doing.
Okay, I got you. So I'm gonna say this. This is what it is. I'm gonna ask you this question. You can answer it honestly. Just at the age of you are now and the years that you've been living on this earth. Have women ever had equal pay?
No.
Never?
Well, women?
No, I'm just asking you to confirm. Never, right? In your life? Never, right?
No, not that I've seen, no.
Exactly. And so I'm never surprised that the fight for equal pay is still going on because women have never had equal pay. Women have gotten better jobs. They've gotten promotions. They've been allowed to, and that's crazy, right? Been allowed to be CEO. They've become CEOs, even when men didn't allow them to. They've broken barriers. They've broken glass ceilings. But equal pay is something that has never happened in our lifetime. So I'm not surprised when I see marches for equal pay. I'm not surprised when I see protests for equal pay because we've never had equal pay. When I look at Black people, I'll ask this, and you can answer that if you want to, but I ask most non-Black people this. What has, a decade is 10 years, all right? What has been the best decade for Black people to live in America?
Shit, I don't know
one. Right? You go back, you go the 80s, the 90s, 70s, the 60s, the 40s, the 50s, 30s. You go back and you start thinking, at every decade, there's been like this machine, this Terminator, so to speak, this overarching umbrella machine that's been keeping Black people down. And although you have spaces and places where there's Black people that are successful and have made it out, you know, including myself, that's not the norm. That's not, in the struggles, it's so hard to get up out of it, right? And so what a lot of non-Black people, what they don't understand is that there's always been that oppression over us. There's always been that heavy, heavy struggle on top of us. There's always been some type of policy, some type of legislature, some type of crookedness and corruption that has purposely held Black people back. So let me give you a couple of examples. A lot of people think, okay, slavery ended, boom, 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 we could do our thing. Great. Go back and watch on Amazon, The Men Who Built America. Go back and look at Rockefeller, Carnegie, and look at U.S. Steel, Henry Ford, and what he did with revolutionizing the auto industry. Between 1865 and 1910, when U.S. Oil and Standard Oil and U.S. Steel and all of those companies with gasoline and Rockefeller and kerosene and Vanderbilt and the trains and J.P. Morgan reorganized the financial system of America, right? Back then, when they started building all those plantations and everything, all those plants, they were giving out jobs to white people. In 1880, 1890, when Rockefeller created Standard Oil, or when Carnegie had U.S. Steel, and they had those steel mills, who do you think were getting those jobs in 1890? Who do you think in 1905, in 1895? Those were white people. They were getting those jobs. So when big steel mills came up in different cities, Black people weren't getting those jobs. So that's how people started building wealth. And what happens when you get a job? When you get a job, you start networking with people. You hear about other opportunities. When you get a job, you wake up every day, you start getting, you going through your day. You're learning new skills. You're learning how to socialize. You're learning the new, you're learning that the bank is giving out certain interest loans for homes because you're around people that are buying things, right? That's what happens at work. Also, when you go to work, you get health benefits and all of those things, right? So then you fast forward up through some years and you look at what happened after, World War II? You look what happened after the World Wars, right? We we had the GI Bill and go back and look at the Levington's housing development, where they, in the 1940s, where they built all of these homes out in Syracuse, and people were able to buy those homes for $1,000 down. And a lot of y'all know about redlining and all of that stuff. So if you look at through the years, a lot of people just start at 1960 because we're used to seeing the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King and all of that, right? And so we start there. But if you go back before then, you could look at the policies that were put in place that held Black people back. So if you could not buy a home in 1940, that home did not, you didn't have some asset that could increase in value for 30 years. So you think about, if you bought a home in 1940, you had some kids by the time 1970 rolled around, now you have 30 years of equity in that home that you are now able to bequeath to your children. You're able to put it, take out, borrow against that home to pay for college or pay for medical emergencies or things like that. Those are things that people do, right? Because when you pay your mortgages, you get a write-off on that, right? So your taxes change, all that stuff. So think about those people that were able to build that money and then go buy them a 2-family and rent to the hood, and then go buy them an apartment complex and rent to the hood. Now you got all these people in this other community that's not building that type of wealth, right? And then you start looking at the laws and everything that that have kind of hovered over Black people for years. So like I said, you take from 1860, 1965 and all of that, all the way up to the 1960s. Then you did the 1960s and take it all the way up to right now. So after the 1960s, now you had what's called front lash. And that's the response to the criminal response, the criminal justice response to the victories of the civil rights movement. So after the 60s, now you had things that started being criminalized, right? So protesting started being criminalized. Then you had the war on drugs that came into play. After the 60s, you notice that. After the 60s, then the hood, think about that for a minute. The Black community wins all these victories in the 60s, and all of a sudden everybody just went out and started doing crack. No, that didn't happen. That didn't happen by accident, things like that. So I think a lot of what a lot of white people, not just white people, non-Black people, what they don't understand, that we're trying to get them to understand, is that we see the issue. We know there's a problem. There's always been a problem. It's almost like looking at your friend in a bad relationship and it's wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's like your friend can't see that they're in a bad relationship, but we can see it. Mm-hmm. Because it's almost like, I used to date him. I used to date her. I used to met, what I'm saying? That's how it is. You know what I mean? And so we as Black people have seen the corruption and the hypocrisy and the racism, and we understand the racist structures in America. We understand that the system is set up to lock up people. All y'all got to do is look at it right now. Right now, the majority of the states that have recreational or decriminalized marijuana are predominantly white. I live in Massachusetts right now. Since 2008, you could walk around with an ounce of marijuana and don't get arrested. Mm-hmm. That was in 2008. It's 2020 right now. So that means for 12 years in Massachusetts, for 12 years, all right, there have not been teenagers that have been locked up and gotten felonies because they had a dime bag on them. There's a lot of girls that have not gone to jail holding weed for their boyfriends. But think about in Louisiana, in Georgia, in Texas, where you have for the last 12 years. So that means if you got arrested at 12, you're 24 now, you got a record still. Mm-hmm. You still got all these things going on. And what Black people are trying to say is, America, y'all don't see that. But we see it. Y'all don't see the things that are going on in the workplace, in education, in the health industry, that is really against Black people. The people don't see it. And that's what we're trying to get them to say. It's not just the police brutality. It's the fact that in 2020, we got to have laws that allow Black women to wear their hair. The natural hair that grew out their head. We got to have a law for that in 2020. What kind of racist crap is that? What is this? And that's, we're just tired of it and saying, okay, look, just give us our fair shot. We don't need a handout. We don't need any of that. Just give us our fair shot. I was watching a debate with James Baldwin this morning, and he's saying one thing that the black man wanted was to be left alone and just allowed to live in peace. And so I think that's that, if I could just wrap it up, that's the message, is that we know something's wrong and it needs to be fixed. And a lot of non-black people are like, nah, we're good. We're good the way we are. But if we're good the way we are, then why has there still been no equal pay for women? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If we're good the way we are, then why is the opioid epidemic the way that it is? Because black people didn't create that. Mm-hmm. And now do we control that? Mm-hmm. We don't control the pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. But if you do your research, you know that the opioid epidemic is huge in America right now, which led to Oxycontin and heroin use, right? But black people ain't do none of that. So if black people are looking at that going, I see what was done to our community with crack. I see what was done to our community with these prison sentences. And then we look over and say, okay, well, now we see what's going on in Ohio with the opioid epidemic. We see what's going on with the Oxycontin epidemic. We see what's going on with the heroin epidemic. So we know something's wrong. But it's a lot of people that's non-black that's like, nah, it's good. Everything cool. And we like, nah, bro, y'all just don't see y'all in a bad relationship. And that's what it is.
And there's so many things that I want to talk about, but we're gonna have to do a part 2, my man.
Yeah, I got some time, man. Go ahead. I can run it on them, man. Like, because there's so much in this, man, that people don't get. Like, we've been seeing it for years, and just like, okay, now everybody else just seeing it, and they were like, all right, So.
Yes, sir. So, hey, well, I'm definitely gonna have you, bro, for part 2 next week. Cause look, it's just so many topics that it gets so deeper just of what you said, and it's like people really don't understand. If you're, like I said, if you're non-black, like we post things and we say things, and people just look at it, and then like we got when Breonna Taylor died, you got all these white people saying, oh yeah, Breonna Taylor this, Breonna Taylor that. Rest in peace to her, right? But at the end of the day, where are those same people that was posting that when she died? Where are they at right now? I haven't seen those people post now one thing in the last 2 weeks on Instagram, on any social media, like I did during that time. Remember the whole blackout period, all that? Yeah. I haven't seen nobody post nothing since then.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not. I'll tell you this, man. I'm not even shocked by that, and I'll tell you why. All you got to do, and think about Breonna Taylor, and man, I could go on and on, because I was just teaching a class this summer called Change 101. It's a race and diversity course for white and non-black people seeking change. So it's a race course just for white people, right? No black. I don't need no black people in my courses, because we know what's going on. To a degree, we know what's going on. But if you want to think about how crazy the system is, right? Thinking about Breonna Taylor, and I'm not surprised at that, because I look back at the Brock Turner case. And so remember Brock Turner, he was the swimmer at Stanford that sexually assaulted the girl behind the garbage dumpster a couple years ago, and he got 6 months in jail. And actually I think he got about 3 months in jail. And so when when I look at that case, right? So here you have this swimmer from Stanford that sexually assaults this girl, and then they go to court, and then he gets off. He basically got 90 days to 6 months or something like that. And I look at that injustice for her, right? So here's a white girl in the court system in America, and she don't get justice, right? So I know there's a problem. And what I say why I'm not surprised by Breonna Taylor, I'm actually this. And I ask white people this when I'm talking in spaces. Where was the march for her? Did they march for her? Did they protest for her? No. And so when you look at I want to touch on this for a minute. I'm gonna stay with you for a second. When you look at the racial problems in America, man, let's just break it down for a minute. White people got their own problems too now. And it ain't just, just about black people and race. If you look at the list of problems in the white community, economics, rent, mortgage, health, opioid crisis, all of these different things, right? Black people don't control any of those.
Mm-hmm.
We don't control the pharmaceutical companies. We don't control the pay scale. We don't control rent and mortgage. We don't control the lending, the banks and all of that. We don't control any of that. Mm. And what people mad at black people for? Mm. We don't control any of the things that causes the issues in the white community. Mm-hmm. But yet it's still the government, the media, all of them got them thinking that black people your problem. Maybe black people not your problem. Maybe you need to look at who your problem is. Maybe you need to look at who we have a problem with and realize that y'all beefing with the same person we beefing with. Mm-hmm. But when you look at that, Coach, man, like that's why, you know, people don't really know where the issues are. And so, you know, I'm not surprised by the Breonna Taylor situation, because when there's a lot of crimes that go on with non-black people, man, there's not a lot of protests. And think about it, man. Where the Me Too movement right now? Gone. Mm-hmm. It's there, but it's not the same. It don't have the same energy that it had a couple years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And that started in, you know, and not saying that black women don't have not faced, you know, sexual assault and harassment and all that, but that really started in the other community, and then it started coming out more and more. But I'm not, you know, discrediting anybody's race that has been through any type of sexual assault. What I'm saying is, when you look at those type of movements and those type of protests, where are they on the other side? Mm-hmm. You know, you don't even see what's going on with the opioid epidemic and the protest about that. That doesn't make the news. It doesn't always lead the news outlets for weeks. But where are those protests? So it's not like, you know, they're not having issues either. So I'm not surprised to see that Breonna Taylor's not more popular in the protest movement.
Hey man, like I said, you dropped a lot of gems, my man. Hey, so for people, I'm gonna just wrap it up, because like I said, I'm gonna have you on for part 2. We can dig deeper in this. So for people, you know, looking for your podcast, would you mind giving them your contact information, how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, man. So everything is at Dariel DT Henry on Twitter, Instagram. My podcast is Swag Bender with Dr. Dariel DT Henry. If you just Google my name, Dariel DT Henry, that's Dariel DT Henry. I'm everywhere: LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You catch me on Snap. I ain't on it as much as I should be. I'm on Snap. I got a little TikTok going, but we're gonna see what the president do with that for a minute. Yeah, those are the outlets you can find me.
And I'll definitely include those in the bio when I publish it as well. But like I said, DT, I appreciate you chopping it up with me. Like I said, you always been real, and I'm definitely gonna have you on for part 2 next week, so we can dig deeper in this.
Yeah, man, I'm all for it. Bring me back. I know we got a lot more to talk about, man. So I'll see y'all for part 2. I'm glad y'all listened in for part 1.
Yes, sir. Thank you, my man.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe or to leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at QuinnMitchellII.com, as well as find us on Instagram for more useful content and resources.